And to be quite honest with you, I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted with Sue.
If ticket prices had remained identical to those seen during peak interest periods, some analysts speculated that certain arenas might have appeared less crowded. Lowering costs, they suggested, could help maintain the visual impression of strong attendance while also welcoming new fans who might not otherwise attend. Yet even those who entertained that possibility acknowledged it would represent only a short-term solution rather than a definitive measure of popularity. Long-term engagement depends on sustained storytelling, competitive matchups, and consistent media coverage. Supporters of the star impact argument maintained that Clark's energy and style naturally generated excitement that was difficult to replicate immediately. Others emphasized that leagues evolve gradually and that temporary fluctuations should not be mistaken for decline. What made Bird's stance especially intriguing was that she had previously praised Clark's influence when she first rose to prominence. That earlier admiration made her recent comments feel, to some listeners, like a shift in tone. Observers suggested the change might reflect her concern for protecting the league's long-term reputation rather than contradicting her past statements. From that perspective, her message was less about questioning Clark's appeal and more about reminding audiences that a professional league's success cannot rest solely on one personality. The discussion ultimately revealed how layered sports narratives can be. A single conversation about ratings and attendance had expanded into a wide-ranging debate about marketing, recognition, sustainability, and respect. Whether one agreed with Bird, Smith, or any other commentator, the exchange demonstrated one undeniable fact: women's basketball had captured enough public attention that its internal debates now commanded national headlines, passionate analysis, and intense fan investment.
You want. Instead, we're still getting bullshit on viewership.
Despite the arguments, one point many observers agreed on was that Clark's college performances had generated extraordinary attention. Her highlight reel plays, deep-range shooting, and confident style captured the imagination of audiences far beyond traditional women's basketball fans. When she transitioned toward the professional stage, expectations were sky-high that her popularity would translate into sustained excitement for the league as a whole. Some analysts believed that momentum might naturally fluctuate once the novelty faded or when scheduling changes shifted broadcast visibility. Without her appearing in certain playoff matchups, the league faced the challenge of maintaining the same level of buzz that had surrounded her earlier appearances. This situation is not unusual in sports history. Leagues often experience spikes in interest when a charismatic new star emerges, followed by periods of adjustment as audiences settle into regular viewing habits. Marketing experts noted that the key test is whether the attention generated by such stars converts into long-term fans who continue watching even when that player is not on the court. In that sense, the discussion surrounding Clark became a case study in sports marketing strategy. Supporters argued that her presence had already achieved something remarkable by introducing millions of new viewers to the league. Skeptics countered that sustained growth requires consistent storytelling about multiple teams and personalities. The differing interpretations didn't diminish her accomplishments but instead highlighted how complex measuring influence can be. Ultimately, the debate underscored the evolving nature of sports fandom, where excitement can surge quickly yet requires careful nurturing to remain strong over time.
ESPN. So because I work at my day job on ESPN, I'm supposed to ignore the...
Bird's perspective appeared rooted in her long-standing commitment to promoting the league as a collective achievement rather than a spotlight for any single athlete. She reportedly felt that certain media narratives painted an unfair picture by implying that the league's success hinged primarily on one player's presence. Determined to defend its reputation, she pushed back against that framing and stressed that the league's progress has been the result of years of dedication from countless players and staff members. Her comments also extended to reactions against Shannon Sharpe, who had publicly praised Clark's role in attracting attention to women's basketball. Both Sharpe and Smith repeatedly highlighted Clark as a major factor behind surges in interest, but Bird seemed concerned that this focus might overshadow the achievements of others who had worked just as hard. From her viewpoint, emphasizing collective growth was not meant to diminish Clark but to ensure that recognition remained balanced. Fans listening to her explanation saw it as a principled stance consistent with her career-long advocacy for teamwork and equality. Critics, however, argued that acknowledging a standout performer does not necessarily erase the contributions of others. The debate revealed a philosophical divide about how sports narratives should be constructed. Should they center on individual stars who draw attention, or should they highlight the broader ecosystem that sustains a league? Bird's stance suggested she favored the latter, believing that long-term credibility depends on stability rather than hype. Regardless of interpretation, her response showed she was willing to engage directly in the conversation instead of avoiding it. That willingness added another layer of intrigue, proving that even respected veterans can become focal points of debate when complex issues about recognition and representation arise.
Smith talk about it. I've seen Shannon Sharp talk about it. And that's what I just don't understand is they work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a product that ESPN
that they invest in?
Yeah, that's where these viewership numbers are coming. Yeah, it's a business you're in. It's not that they can't. And by the way, it's not that they can't be critical of certain things. They can have their opinions. But that's where I don't understand.
The topic of ticket pricing quickly became one of the most talked about elements in the discussion. Reports circulated online claiming that some playoff seats were available at unusually low prices, figures that sparked surprise and speculation among fans. While such claims varied widely depending on market, seating section, and timing, they fueled a narrative suggesting that demand might not be as high as expected. Commentators who supported Clark argued that if she had been playing in those matchups, prices might have been higher due to increased interest from casual viewers eager to see her compete live. Others pushed back against that assumption, noting that ticket costs fluctuate for many reasons, including venue size, opponent popularity, and resale market dynamics. Economists and sports analysts alike pointed out that promotional pricing is a common tactic used across leagues to fill seats, energize crowds, and attract new fans who might later become regular attendees. Still, the idea that unusually cheap tickets existed became a viral talking point, repeated across social media posts and debate shows. What made the claim so powerful was not necessarily its accuracy in every case but its symbolic impact. For supporters of the star power drives interest argument, it served as anecdotal evidence. For skeptics, it was an oversimplified conclusion drawn from limited examples. The truth likely lay somewhere between those extremes. Yet the discussion demonstrated how quickly a single statistic or screenshot can shape public perception, especially when amplified through online platforms. In the end, the pricing debate became less about dollars and more about what those numbers represented, questions about demand, visibility, and the evolving relationship between individual fame and league-wide popularity.
Tickets at the Target Center in Minnesota selling for as low as $10.
When Sue Bird recently spoke about Caitlin Clark, many fans felt the moment carried a sense of full-circle reflection rather than simple commentary. Bird, who spent decades helping build women's basketball into a respected professional spectacle, addressed ongoing conversations about league popularity, television ratings, and shifting audience attention. Her remarks surfaced at a time when debates about viewership trends were already circulating online, with analysts and fans dissecting whether interest in the WNBA had cooled slightly after a period of explosive growth. Some interpreted her tone as thoughtful and measured, while others saw it as subtly critical of the narrative that any single star could dramatically sway the league's fortunes. Bird's perspective carried weight because she has lived through every phase of the league's evolution, from years of modest exposure to its more recent surge in national visibility. She emphasized that fluctuations in ratings or fan engagement are rarely caused by one factor alone and often reflect broader patterns such as scheduling, competing broadcasts, market dynamics, and seasonal sports cycles. Still, her comments ignited discussion because they touched on a sensitive topic, whether the league's recent attention spike was tied heavily to Clark's arrival. Supporters of Clark argued that her presence undeniably brought new eyes to the sport, while Bird's supporters insisted her point was about sustainability and long-term stability rather than dismissing any individual's impact. The conversation quickly spread across sports talk shows, social platforms, and fan forums, with each side interpreting her words through its own lens. What made the moment especially striking was not just what she said, but the symbolism behind it. Bird, once the face of the league's competitive excellence, was now analyzing the next generation that might shape its future. That generational contrast turned a simple interview into a wider cultural discussion about stardom, league identity, and how women's basketball measures growth in an era where viral moments and highlight clips can influence public perception almost overnight.
About the attendance and says basically that Caitlin had the highest attendance in the playoffs, which Caitlin Clark played her first 2 rounds in Connecticut, which only holds roughly 10,000, and they got swept, so they never made it back to Cambridge in Indiana to play a home game. So they.
Amid the ongoing debate, observers pointed to reports that league officials experimented with pricing strategies during certain playoff games. According to circulating claims, some tickets were offered at lower costs than fans expected, prompting speculation that the move was designed to ensure strong attendance. Analysts noted that such strategies are common across professional sports and entertainment industries, particularly when organizers want to create lively atmospheres for televised events. A full arena can enhance the viewing experience, making games appear more energetic and appealing to audiences at home. Critics interpreted the reported price drops as evidence that demand might not have matched earlier hype, while supporters argued it simply reflected smart marketing designed to broaden accessibility. The distinction mattered because perception often shapes narrative as much as facts do. On the surface, packed stands suggested healthy interest, yet skeptics questioned whether those crowds represented organic demand or strategic pricing. Social media amplified these questions, with fans posting screenshots of ticket listings and debating what they meant. Some insisted the lower prices proved the league was struggling without Clark's draw, while others said such conclusions ignored variables like market size, opponent popularity, or resale timing. In reality, attendance figures alone rarely reveal the full picture of fan engagement. Television ratings, merchandise sales, digital interaction, and long-term sponsorship deals all contribute to a league's overall health. Still, the ticket conversation gained traction because it offered a tangible example people could easily visualize. The debate demonstrated how a single data point, when repeated often enough, can influence public perception even if its interpretation remains contested.
Is a Caitlin Clark effect on all of basketball and especially on women's basketball ratings. Kudos to her. She has elevated an entire sport.
Another layer of debate emerged because Smith's role at ESPN added extra attention to his statements. As one of the network's most recognizable voices, his opinions often carry significant influence, and audiences know he rarely hesitates to speak candidly. In this instance, he reiterated his belief that Clark's presence had been a major attraction for viewers, arguing that star power can play a substantial role in drawing casual fans to a sport. Bird, on the other hand, reportedly maintained that attendance at games remained strong and that arenas still showed encouraging levels of support. She suggested that focusing solely on television numbers could ignore the atmosphere inside venues, where fans continued to show enthusiasm for teams across the league. Analysts pointed out that both perspectives could hold truth simultaneously, since attendance and broadcast ratings don't always move in perfect sync. Discussions about ticket pricing added yet another dimension. Some observers claimed that lower prices in certain markets might create the appearance of stable attendance even if demand fluctuated, while others argued that pricing strategies are common business practices used across all professional sports to ensure accessibility and maintain crowd energy. The clash of viewpoints illustrated how complex sports economics can be, especially in a league still expanding its audience. What fascinated many viewers was not just the disagreement itself but how respectfully it unfolded. Neither side resorted to personal attacks, instead, they presented contrasting interpretations of the same situation. That dynamic turned the debate into a case study of how sports discourse functions in the modern era, where statistics, perception, and marketing strategy intertwine. For fans, it became a reminder that numbers alone rarely capture the full story of a league's health or popularity.